Well, what was the first kiss like?
I don't even remember the first kiss. Was that in DC? Yeah, it was in DC when we hugged and
Did
just
you kiss
kissed.
him or did he kiss
I think
you?
it
Did
was
he go
natural.
in?
I think we hugged and just kissed.
And did it
And
feel euphoric? Did it feel amazing?
it
Did you
did.
get
It
all the feels,
did.
the
The
butterflies?
butter, and I still get those butterflies. Like I'm
Yeah.
crazy over my husband. I love my husband. Like that is my. Even if he wasn't my husband, he will be one of my best friends. I am sure of that. He's just that dude.
How did you meet your husband? As far as was that overseas?
No,
Or like,
I
no?
was okay. I was
So,
living
okay.
overseas, and he was my Facebook friend. We till this day we still don't know how we became Facebook friends, but Michael and I were Facebook friends. And I remember vividly saying at the beginning of like 2012 or 2013, I love it overseas. The only way I'll ever come back overseas is if I meet a man and we get married. And sure enough, I met a man and we got married. But we were Facebook friends, and we don't remember what the circumstances of how we became Facebook friends. I think we had one mutual friend, and none of us, we don't even know who he is. I don't know who he is. He don't know who he is. And he always used to come up on my timeline. And I thought he was a young guy, like, and I just ended a situation. I was in a situationship, we're in not quite a relationship, but it was a situationship. And I remember he used to like write a lot online, and I remember writing him privately, strictly like just like, hey, I love what you're producing online and it's encouraging. So keep it up. Like I thought he was like 20. I don't know how. I thought he was young because his picture was young. And he was like, oh, thank you. I appreciate that, sis. And I was like, that okay, bro. It was nothing. And that was it. And a month and a half later, maybe 2 months later, I opened up my inbox and he inboxed me again and said, hey, I see you're living overseas. What are some of the things that you're doing? And the rest has been history. 11 years later, here we are.
So how do you fall in love in a long distance relationship? How does that work?
Well, it happens really, really fast. It happens, it happens really, really fast, especially when you are growing and you're learning about a person and you have plans. You have to have a plan to end the long distance. If you're going to do the long distance thing, you have to have a plan to end the long distance. But it happened fairly quickly. And it happened quickly.
Well, what made Michael different than the rest? What made Michael different from the rest?
Michael had, hold on. Okay.
And what was the rest like?
Well, we're not going to talk about the rest because I always tell people I don't have exes. Like after 11, 12 years, you get a clean slate. Like you don't remember. I'm just playing.
Okay, gotcha. All right, no worries.
No, I'm just
We don't
playing.
have to spill the beans.
No,
you know?
listen, I don't have no beef with anybody who would be considered an ex. So that's no problem. But Michael was different because for me, he had such a quiet confidence about him. And when I say quiet confidence, like my husband is so humble in places where I feel like, boy, do you know who you are? You know what I'm saying? And when I met him, he just was so like different in terms of the way he spoke to me. Like he spoke to a different part of me. And it's so, I was thinking about it now. He named me and he started calling me AJ. That's his name for me. He calls me AJ. And no one in my life called me that up until I met him. He called me AJ. And it was just random. Like he just started calling me AJ from the first moment he met me. He was like, what's your name? I'm like, Ashley Sutton. I mean, Ashley Causey at the time. And he was like, well, what's your middle name? And I was like, Ashley Joy. And he was like, I'm going to start calling you AJ. And he's always called me AJ. And now I understand that spoke to a different part of who I was. And that spoke to a different part of the woman I was becoming. And he has always just been so present and so attentive to my needs, even the needs that I didn't feel like I had. And also we met each other at an older version of ourselves, right? So that's when I told you, not that I can compare him to the other guys I was talking to, it's just that I was a different person at a time in a season that I had met him. And he was somebody totally different. I mean, we were only 27 and 28 looking back. We were kind of young, but it's still, we were different than who we were when we were in our early 20s.
So how did your family feel about him? How did your brothers?
Well, first of all, it was quick, right? Because we met, dated, courted long distance in a year and got engaged in a year.
Wow, 1 year.
1 year. We met probably October, November of 2012, and we got engaged December of 2013 and got married.
Well, what was the first interaction like? What was the first?
Okay,
date
so
like?
the first interaction was I flew out to DC. I was coming back from overseas. And at that time, we've been talking for about 2-3 months. And I was coming back to the States, and he was like, bring your mom and bring your dad with you. So I was like, sure. So my mom and my dad, they came with me, and we went out to DC and we met him. And he drove up because he's from Elizabeth City, North Carolina. So he went to a HBCU as well. He went to ECSU, and we met him then. And that was the first time I met him. But it was one of those things, you know how you like someone? Like I liked him, but I only knew the him that was like on FaceTime and on, I believe, Skype at the time. I wanted to see the way this man interacted with people. I wanted to see his cadence, his presence, the way he walked, the way he talked. And from that day when I met him in DC, I was like, yeah, God, that's my husband.
That's what's up.
That's my husband. And my parents met him and they loved him more. My mom is not easily impressed with anybody. Like she's just the type of woman like, oh, okay. I'm like, oh, mom, this is so-and-so and there, da-da-da. And she just never been impressed by any guy I brought home. But with him, she smiled big. I'm like, look at you. And she just loved him, and she still loves him to this day. I feel like if we get into it, she probably would take his side over mine.
So what was the proposal like? How did that go down?
So the proposal, take it back. We DC, we met. We that's the first time. That was our first date. And that summer, he flew me out to meet his family in Elizabeth City, North Carolina. So I met his family, spent time with his family in Elizabeth City. And I had to go back overseas. And that was the moment I was like, man, this distance between us is not going to be long, right? We've been talking for 9 months at the time. I was like, this distance, I just know that it's not going to be long. And he was like, hey, I want to fly out to Ireland to meet you, to see you. And I was like, oh, shoot, like, yeah, this is it. This man is about to propose to me. And at the time, we've been talking about marriage, and we actually was doing pre-engagement counseling. Like we were like, you know how some people do premarital counseling? We were doing pre-engagement counseling. Like, let's make sure this is real before he even put a ring on it. Right. So we did pre-engagement counseling, and he was like, yeah, I definitely want to come out to meet you, to see you. And I was like, cool, but I'm going to Africa, West Africa at the time. I had an engagement out there, and I was flying out to West Africa. He was like, fine, I'll go to Ireland. Is your parent, because my parents at the time were in Ireland as well. He said, that'll give me an opportunity to talk to them. So he went to Ireland while I was in West Africa, and he asked my parents for their blessing. And unbeknownst to me, he also asked my brothers. So he asked all three of my brothers and my parents if he can propose to me. And I was coming back from West Africa, and I had a layover in Paris, and he flew out to Paris, where he spent a couple of days, and he proposed to me in Paris.
Wow, that's so sweet. Oh my gosh. These estrogen pills are getting to me. I'm starting to, get some tears here. Oh.
Yes.
So, I mean, how about this? Of course, Michael is an attractive guy. Trust me, I'm not trying to hit on your husband, please. It's okay. Like when you two were together, what kind of attention were you guys actually drawing? As far as like the people that were in your circle or people that wanted to really get to know you and be a part of what you're doing? How was that? Just like Ashley and Michael together, how are people experiencing you two?
There's definitely, I believe that we both are purpose for each other, and we serve a greater purpose together. In terms of how people experience this, I don't know. How do people experience this? I can't speak for other people, but I hope that that they will look at what we have is not as a perfect union, right? Like not a perfect marriage, but I guess two people who are called not only to each other, but called in our various purposes, if that makes sense. I don't know if I answered your question. Like, I don't know how.
Okay, well, how do people experience your purpose?
I definitely feel that people, when they see him in his element, right? He's an artist. He's an artist as well. He's a singer and he is an actor. He does stage plays and other various things that he's gifted in. And for me, speaking and coaching the way that I do, I think that people definitely know that, wow, those two are called to do that thing that they're doing. And they are purposed in that. And there is grace for them in that lane. And I think that it definitely shows up in our marriage. I think that he has never stood in the way of me doing what I was called to do. He has never shown jealousy or telling me, no, you shouldn't do that. Or, he has never put a cap on what I need to do. Any idea I've ever had, anything I ever wanted to do. He was the first person on the front line, like, okay, how can we make this happen? And same for him. And I think that that's what balanced us. That's what makes us work. The fact that we do have a call outside of each other, but we know that it is a greater call together.
Well, what was the first kiss like?
I don't even remember the first kiss. Was that in DC? Yeah, it was in DC when we hugged and just kissed.
Did you kiss him or did he kiss you?
I think it was natural. I think we hugged and just kissed.
And did it feel euphoric? Did it feel amazing?
It did.
Did you get all the feels, the butterflies?
And I still get those butterflies. Like I'm crazy over my husband. I love my husband. Like that is even if he wasn't my husband, he will be one of my best friends. I am sure of that. He's just that dude. He's very trustworthy. You can tell him secrets. Like you can tell him something and he would never tell anyone in the world. Like he would take it to the grave with him. And people tell him stuff all the time. And he was like, if a guy tells him that their wife is pregnant and I find out, oh, so-and-so is pregnant, he'll be like, yeah. And I'm like, you already knew. Well, they told me not to tell anybody. I'm like, sir, I'm your wife.
The wife got to get all the juice, huh? You got to tell the wife everything? Is that the rules?
Yes,
as the husband, you got to tell the wife
share
everything.
the tea, but he doesn't share tea with me. So, we're working on that. Years later, we're still working on that.
All right, good. But you share the tea with all of him.
But he don't want to hear the tea.
You don't want to hear it?
He's like, yeah, that's none of your business, and I don't care about that either. So I have friends who I can share tea with because Michael ain't a tea type of guy. He's like, yeah, no, mind your business.
All right. That's what's up.